I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's a new Monster Hunter game coming out. Capcom first revealed Monster Hunter World during Sony's E3 press conference, and let's be real, it looks amazing. It looks like everything I could have ever wanted in an HD Monster Hunter game, but with all the pretty graphics and giant monsters and ridiculously huge swords, and look at how big that sword is! But if there's one thing that stuck out to me as a negative, well, it doesn't look very colorful, does it? Older Monster Hunter games were known for being vibrant, almost cartoonishly so. At this point, Monster Hunter World looks like a far more realistic take on the series. It's not a bad thing, but it's definitely different. So, after watching the recently released gameplay demo for like the 90th time, I started thinking, is there a way to see what the game would look like with a bit more color? And then I remembered that all I do is edit video all day long, and I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. And that's what this video is. I know that game development is infinitely more complicated than a bit of video color correction, but I wanted to experiment a bit and see if I could actually pull off a classic look with the new footage. And honestly, the results were pretty interesting. Let's start off with the very first thing that we get to see in the demo, the handler. Not only is it great to see a Monster Hunter NPC in such detail, but it's an easy way to see the differences between the original footage and the color correction. What you're seeing now is the original footage, no changes whatsoever. It's relatively colorful, definitely a far cry from the gunmetal grays and muddy browns that most other games seem to go for, but then again, it's not nearly as saturated as previous Monster Hunter games, and that is where the color correction comes in. Obviously, it's a more vibrant image. I went and boosted the overall saturation quite a bit while pulling back on a lot of the blue shades in the picture. The result is something that feels more like our hero meeting with the handler during the middle of the day, whereas the original footage has a much cooler, early morning-ish tone to it. The change of color makes a big difference, and it's even more noticeable in the following area. For our first look at a new Monster Hunter game, this opening area does everything right. Compared to older games in the series, it's a huge graphical upgrade. But as with the opening area, it's a little cold. Let's change that. It's here that the new color scheme really starts to make an impact. It's not a realistic look, but the bright colors and saturated environments definitely evoke a classic Monster Hunter vibe. The bright blue sky and vivid foliage really make the scenery pop, and the great Jagras that pops up out of nowhere definitely stands out from the environment more so than it used to. You can see the same thing later on in the demo when the hunter lures the Anjanath out into a couple different open areas. Again, it's much more colorful, and the Anjanath itself sticks out more. But there's more to the ancient forest than brightly lit plains. Seeing as much of the demo takes place below the forest's canopy, it only makes sense to take a look and see what we can change around. Now, as with the rest of the demo, the original footage is very blue. Again, it's meant to evoke a colder feel, but it's easy to argue that it's a bit too blue. However, by pushing the saturation and pulling back on both blue and red shades, it's possible to push the colors without turning the whole picture purple. Alright, so there's still a lot of purple, but I think it's a much more effective use of color. The scenery and saturation still evoke the sense of being in the underbrush, but this time it doesn't feel so washed out. While the outdoor areas still look fine in the original footage, the caves almost look foggy. To be fair, I can understand what Capcom was going for, but I mean, it's so blue. Really, the only scene in which the overly blueness makes sense is during the final moments of the hunt. It's supposed to be nighttime, the blue hues make sense. But even then, pushing the contrast and saturation makes a pretty big difference without sacrificing the late-at-night atmosphere that the team was going for. Finally, I wanted to take a look at one last sequence, namely the part where the Rathalos swoops in like a badass and just absolutely wrecks the Anjanath.
Oh my God.
It's a great scene, and it does a fantastic job at setting Monster Hunter World apart from the rest of the series. But this is a scene where the colors really should have been pushed as far as they can go. Sunset levels are an easy excuse to crank up the saturation and contrast, but Capcom chose to keep it blue. You've been looking at the original footage for the past couple minutes, but this is what it looks like with the same color correction we used at the beginning of the video. Needless to say, it makes a huge difference. The skyline really lights up, while the extra contrast helps fill out the shadows. Here, it looks like twilight after a sunny day, whereas the original version almost looks like it's about to rain. Now, there's one thing I couldn't change around as much as I wanted, and that was the Rathalos itself. For those who haven't played the games before, the Rathalos is usually bright red. Here, it's more of a brownish color. It's more realistic, but it's probably not what longtime fans were expecting. Alright, it should be pretty clear that I think Capcom can do a bit more with the colors in Monster Hunter World. The games have always been over the top, and I don't really see a need for this super photorealistic look that they're going for. Everything else about the game looks great. I mean, the character models, the animations, the environments, it just all looks fantastic. But I think if the development team pushes that color just a little bit more, Monster Hunter World could look absolutely amazing. At this point, the video might sound like one big criticism, but that's really not what I was going for. I've heard plenty of complaints surrounding Monster Hunter World, like it's being westernized, the graphics are bad, Capcom hates Nintendo, but I didn't see anyone really talking about the colors. Like I said before, I was curious as to what I could do in regards to making World look more like older games in the series, but that doesn't mean I'm not excited for the game. I mean, I made an entire video on one tiny little slice of gameplay. It should be obvious that I'm pretty friggin' psyched for this game. So, in exchange for me ranting and rambling for the past 8 minutes, now it's your turn. I'm genuinely interested to see what the community thinks of this video. Did you like the color correction, or are you a fan of the newer style? You can go ahead, leave a comment down below. I promise I'll read it. And hey, while you're at it, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and that way you'll know exactly when new videos are uploaded. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.